how have you kept yourself motivated even though you have a challenge in terms of your visual impairment?
I was so doggone stubborn. I just said, this is not going to take me out. Now, initially, when I found out had this issue, and it's from an autoimmune condition with the retina, and I admit I was troubled, and I questioned, am I going to really be able to pursue things? Go back to school, get my degrees, buy a home, get married, all these things I had in question. But then when I began to really pray about it, and I didn't look at this situation as, whoa, it's me. I looked at it as a gift. That gift showed me the gift that I could give to others, how to overcome your obstacles and how to adapt and be flexible. Doesn't mean that I can't do it. I might have to do it in a
Hi, I'm Lynnis Mullins, and I love to help women to vibe, to be more vibrant, intuitive, beautiful, and empowered in midlife. So come on, let's vibe. I'm so glad to have you here on the Vibe Living podcast today. Thanks, Cherri. Please tell us a little bit about yourself and how you became so passionate about the idea of women over 50 and beyond becoming high achievers.
Sure. I've always had a vision how I saw myself showing up in the world, especially as a young girl. And it was kind of my way of escaping, the bullies and all the things that I didn't like. So I would just always visualize who Cherri wanted to be. And so I carried that vision into my adult years, and I was just so hungry for personal development. I guess I can call myself a personal development guru because I was into books and workshops and all these different things just to really elevate myself. And so this vision that I had of myself was that I wanted to help other people grow and develop. And that's when I started pursuing my career in the training and development field. And so I held roles as training specialist, training manager. Then my last role was a leadership performance coach. And I considered myself a high achieving woman simply because, and it always starts out with the vision. I had the vision, then I put together the plan and the strategy, and I executed it. And so now I'm in this space of, I would say, reinventing myself at 61. I'm no longer in corporate America, and I left in 2000. Well, I wouldn't say I left because you know how that is, transitioned me out. So I thought, well, hey, here's the time for me. I don't want to go back. I was 57 at the time. And I said, let me continue to stay on the path that I believe that I was called to do, to really help people grow and develop. And that took me into the space of serving women. I did that in the corporate arena, serving women leadership as well as men, but my passion was there. And there I developed a women's leadership program. And I started coaching on the side because I was working my job full time and I was coaching women on the side and really coaching them through overcoming their perceived limitations. Then I moved into the space of creating a vision beyond your 9 to 5. Because interestingly, when I talk about vision, that's the first thing that I work with when my clients. I start with vision. What do you see yourself doing? What does your life look like? Because little did I know, while I was practicing visualizing my ideal situation as a young girl, I didn't know that I would be in a struggle of my eyesight. And now I'm visually impaired. So it's interesting. I said, God has a funny way of teaching me how to live by my inner vision light, not by my outer vision circumstances.
That's really an amazing story. Well, how I'm sure many people wonder, well, how did you even get the motivation to continue to try to do something on your own when you realized you were visually impaired?
Well, the thing is, I was having visual issues for about 30 years, and it really didn't get bad until I got in my early 50s. So even though I was still struggling a little bit, I learned how to navigate. So no one really knew that I was visually impaired because I was a master at navigating, and I still held this vision for myself. I didn't see my limitations. I didn't have perceived limitations. I found that I learned how to be resilient, and I wanted to show people what's possible no
Mm.
matter what stage you're in and what type of different ability that you have, that anything is possible. So I think that's what motivated me. I knew that I was the role that I held, and I understood my purpose, that I was on assignment. So I just sucked it up, became resilient, and just became brave enough to take one step at a time.
That's really powerful. And so many times women are asked this question, especially successful women. What is it about you that you think is special? What sets you apart? Or what is your superpower? What's your superpower? And what's your definition of a superpower?
Sure. The definition of a superpower is that innate ability for me to show up in all my wares and all my brilliance. And I think my superpower is, no, I believe this is what it is. It's I'm able to connect with people, and I show up with a smile. I'm able to help people feel warm and inviting in a space. And I think that's why I was really good at what I did as a trainer and as well as a coach,
You
because
know,
I showed up in my brilliance.
and because you did this yourself and you work with women, how do you help women figure out what their superpower is if they're not quite sure what it is?
That's a very good question. For me, it's about what made me light up on the inside. And so that's something that I would ask, my clients, what makes you light up? What makes you smile? And what gives you passion? That's something that you really want to do, or something that you really want to call into the world,
Mhm.
or something that you want to change. And what makes you good at bringing that change forth?
It's interesting because you mentioned the word what makes you good. And I find with working with women over these last 17 years that sometimes it's very difficult for us to identify or speak about those things that we're proud of, those things that we know are good for ourselves. We have to focus, we have a tendency to focus on what's not working or focus
Yeah.
what's not right with us. Why would you say that that might be counterproductive in terms of really being able to succeed and move into your power?
Well, it goes back and back to the question that you asked me. What I did was sometimes, and this is what I would encourage other women to do that I work with, I would ask people, I would do a survey. Let's say I would do a survey of clients that I work with, people that were in my training class, even my leaders. I would send out maybe like a 5 questionnaire and asking them specific questions about me. What do you see my strengths are? Things of that nature, where it would give me some indication. Like I felt like I knew what my power was and what I was good at. But when you see other people, when other people experience you and in your space, it's like, wow.
Mhm.
And so it's confirmation. And I think that's another way that where you can get information. How do you make people feel when they're in your presence?
Yeah, those are all great questions. And I can see some women getting the gumption to ask those questions, but I'll take it even a step further than that. Some women are afraid of the answers, so they don't ask. And I wouldn't just say women, I would say, people in general, but definitely women are
Mhm.
afraid. And to me, it has something to do with that constant quest of perfection that we say we're not in quest of, but deep down inside, there's something subconsciously that keeps us glued to the idea of being perfect. How do you help women push past that ideal of being perfect and help them kind of have more of a realistic view of who they are or who they want to be?
Yeah, that's something that I struggled with. And I really believe that sometimes that stems from childhood, how you were raised, because I was raised in a household where everything seemed like it had to be perfect,
Mm,
and felt like it wasn't good enough. And so I think that right there is where the culprit is,
mhm,
how we were raised. And so the way I had to overcome that was just really trusting in myself and seeing the beauty parts of me, the things that I really liked about me. And then also, going back to things that people have said to me that were
mhm.
really, a confirmation, whether it was, my leaders or my friends or peers that I work with. If you really listen closely, people have kind things to say about you. I think what it is sometimes, Lenise, we have a hard time accepting those kind things.
Mhm. That's true because we're looking through that filter of what didn't go right. But
Yes.
why do you think it's important? Why do you think the work that you do is so important when it comes to helping women?
I think the things that's really important for me and what I do is I work with high achieving women leaders, helping them create work-life harmony. And I say work-life harmony, not balance, because balance is really, that's rigid. And I really think that when people think of balance, it's like you have to hold all these balls in the air. So for me, it's really about looking at yourself and blending that with your looking at success and blending that with well-being.
Yes.
So really, how are we taking care of ourselves? That's a holistic approach, and that's something that I really believe in is work-life integration. And it goes back to vision. What truly matters to you? And sometimes we get so busy, so to speak, is that we're doing all these different things. And what I find out is something that I really work with my clients is boundaries.
Mm,
Saying yes to the right things that matter. They're in alignment, again, going back to the vision and who you are and who you desire to be, and learning how to say no gracefully so that you can have the time and the energy to pursue the things that really matter that will get you to the goal.
Are you, when you say setting boundaries, are you basically coaching women to, kind of like draw the line in the sand in terms of how much they're willing to extend of themselves? Or is it more about drawing the line in the sand in terms of how much they're willing to do? Or is it a balance of that?
It is a balance of that because all that is key,
Mhm.
and to that so that you're taking care of yourself. You're able to take care of yourself. You're able to do the things that truly matter to you, whether that's spending more time with your family or more hobbies, or maybe you have a business that you want to pursue on the side. You know, it's not that you can have it all. You have to make choices of what you can have at this particular time so that you can take care of yourself. And that's something that I had to learn how to do because
Mhm.
being a high achieving woman, I was always reaching for the shiny object. Oh, I need to do that. That
Mhm.
looks good over here. And so what happens when I find out that when I do all those things and saying yes, the things that sound good, they are good, but they aren't good for this time and season. I
Mhm.
found myself so confused and so far away from the vision. So that's when I realized you have to let something go. You have to do what truly matters. And that's where integrating work life, because I like to play golf. I need time to do the things that I love. I like to spend time with my fiance. I like to have time with my friends. And so I have to choose to take care of myself, and I work out. I meditate. All those things really matter, and they're important to me. And they're important to every woman's well-being, to find those things and to have a really good blend.
I agree with you. It's interesting because the whole work-life balance was something that came up a lot when Michelle Obama was in office. And one of the things that she said, or when her husband was in office, and one of the things that she said was that women can have it all, but not all at the same time. And that is very true. I have had an opportunity myself to work in corporate America. I raised a large family of 4 girls who are now all in their 30s and doing well. I have 6 grandchildren. I'm 22 years in my second marriage. I have my own business. I still dance, for my church. I'm active in my community. I have a large group of friends that I like to hang out with. I love to travel, all these things, right? But I do not do all of them all at one time, although it has felt like the last few weeks. Been doing all of it at one time, but normally I do not, because what happens is then the zest within which you do things begins to change. And I
Yes.
think sometimes what happens is that we see all these bright, shiny objects and say, okay, it's only 2 or 3, I can do that. And then somewhere in there, we get kind of burned out.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because we're trying to do too much. There was someone who spoke into my life this morning that was very interesting. And he was saying, you're at a stage in your life where consistency is key. Consistently doing the things that are necessary to accomplish your goals, even if it's in small increments. And also taking a look at the time within which you spend a lot of time doing things. I learned last year, for instance, I worked less, but I had the most successful year ever monetarily in my business, but I worked less.
Yes.
So I learned something from that. So I don't work 8-hour days any longer. And the 16-hour days that I first did the first 5 years when I started my company, those are long gone. I might start my day at 4:30 in the morning and end my day at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, because that's 8 hours, even though everybody else is working till 5 or 6 o'clock, so I to use consistency, but also use common sense in terms of what's real and what makes sense. When you're talking and working with women in terms of the things that they want to achieve, what are some of the advice you give them in terms of how to go about achieving them?
Well, and I'll keep going back to the vision. What is it that you want? Because a lot of times, sometimes women don't know what we want. When you don't know what you want, you'll find yourself all over the place. So we begin by, what do you want and what truly matters to you? And is this something that you're willing to put the time and the energy into? As well as what are some of the things that might get in your way to achieving this vision or these goals? And I think that's the key too. What gets in the way? And so that's where we want to look at, how do we eliminate or minimize those things that might sabotage you from achieving your goals?
You mentioned something about being visually impaired.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, as we get older, things start happening to our health. And that's where I come in, so to speak. But, things begin to happen. And what I really want to try to help women to understand is that even though those things can happen, it doesn't mean that you have to stop pursuing those things that are important to you or pursuing those things that you're passionate about. What about you? How have you kept yourself motivated, even though you have a challenge in terms of your visual impairment?
I was so doggone stubborn, Lynnis. I just said, this is not going to take me out. Now, initially, when I found out I had this issue, and it's from an autoimmune condition with the retina, and I admit I was troubled, and I questioned, am I going to really be able to pursue things? Go back to school, get my degrees, buy a home, get married, all these things I had in question. But then when I began to really pray about it, and I didn't look at this situation as, whoa, it's me.
Mm-hmm.
I looked at it as a gift. That gift showed me the gift that I could give to others, how to overcome your obstacles and how to adapt and be flexible. Now, that's what I had to learn how to do in my life. How do I be adaptable and flexible to the things that I can do? And I would have to make adjustments. It doesn't mean that I can't do it. I might have to do it in a different way. And so I showed up in corporate America even with this issue and nobody knew it, but I learned how to navigate when I had to give presentations or do training. If I was having a bad day, I was like, oh my God, am I going to be able to see the blah, blah, blah? I learned how to position myself, just making adjustments. I didn't make excuses. I made adjustments. And that's the key. And that's what motivated me, because I knew that I was called to do it and I was called to have impact. And what better a way of a person, someone who's advocating for vision, having a vision for your life, is someone who's visually impaired.
Isn't that
How
something?
ironic
Kind of
is
goes
that?
kind of goes hand in glove, doesn't it? It's
Yeah.
And I was looking at your site the other day, and one of the things that you have there is a guide towards saying no. And I
Yeah.
think sometimes part of our vision has to incorporate, when is it that I'm going to say no? Because that should definitely be on your agenda somewhere, because you're
Yes.
going to at some point have to make some decisions on what you can and cannot do. And saying no has always been a challenge, especially for women. Why do you think that is? And what are some of the things that you talk about in the guide to help women to say no?
A lot of it, I believe, comes from societal expectations. Women, we are expect to show up and do things with a smile and be gracious about it, be accommodating, because we do. I think that probably is our Achilles heel. Sometimes we are too accommodating. And so, or we're afraid to hurt people's feelings. We hate to say no. We want to be accepted. We don't want to lose anybody. All those things play a role in that. And so in the guide, it talks about how to gracefully say no politely. I've had to do that lots of times. People ask me, can you show up and do this and that? And sometimes I would. And then when I realized I was overwhelmed and facing anxiety attacks, I learned how to say, sometimes I would say, let me think about it and get back to you. And sometimes I would say, you know what? That sounds like a really great opportunity, but it really isn't in alignment with what I'm doing right now. So I'm going to have to decline, but thank you so much for asking. So it's really about in the guide of how to gracefully say no. And then it talks about, how to even overcome that guilt, because I think that's the big thing, is guilt. And that goes back to setting boundaries, because I used to feel guilty about setting boundaries with my mom. And sometimes we have to start with our family.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that we can do that even in our business and our work life as well.
Yes, I definitely understand that. I have to have that experience with my daughters. I mean, there's four of them, and then two of them have three kids each. And now, as of tomorrow, three of my daughters will live in three different states. I still
Wow.
have one here with me, but there's going to be more of the no thing, because it's just too much. But I do believe also that many times when you get in a situation where you're going to have to start saying no, if you look on the other side of what's going on in terms of the person that is requesting it, they have been prepared for such a time as this. And your no is part of their development. Seriously. And I always tell my daughters all the time, this is nothing new, but if God brings you to it, he will bring you through it. And
Yes.
it does not necessarily mean that I'm the one that does it. I'll be your cheerleader, I'll be your coach, your friend, but maybe it's something else that either someone else helps you do or you do it yourself. I think many times on the other side of no to the person that you're saying no to is part of their development, part of what they need to learn how to do.
Exactly, because sometimes what happens is we take on other people's responsibilities that really aren't ours.
Yeah. That's
So you're right. And sometimes no is a teachable moment.
Yeah, it really is. I still struggle with feeling guilty. I still feel like I need to chop myself up in four different pieces like I have for 40 years and, be here and
Yes.
there. But actually, a couple of years ago, I made a decision when my daughter, when she was, I think she was about 8 months pregnant, decided she was going to relocate to join her husband in the middle of a pandemic to Texas. And I thought that she should stay here and wait, have the baby, then go. But she was adamant about it. And I was so upset about that. And I tried the best to support her, but it really grieved my spirit. But I realized now, almost 3 years later, even though it was crazy, that was ultimately the right decision for her, because she grew so much as a result of that. Everything
Yes.
that I thought would happen absolutely did. It absolutely did. I was right. But
Yes.
she was able to handle it, and it made her a stronger and better person, so that now it's not a big deal. And it prepared me for this other daughter saying, I'm moving. And she's got now a 6 month old and a little girl, and her son just graduated from high school, and all these things are going on. And I thought to myself, well, it's
Yeah.
your life, your journey. And it's so funny
Exactly.
because as I'm thinking about them, you know what? 40 years ago, when my daughter was 3 months old, I was doing the exact same thing. I was telling my mom and dad, I'm moving back to Atlanta. He said, "But the baby's only 3 months. That's okay. I'll get a job, blah, 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 blah." And then my mom and dad were worried about, but you know what? I did it. Isn't it funny how we worry about things that actually we've already done ourselves? I don't know where that comes from. Sometimes we forget
Yes.
all the things that we've done and
Mm,
all the things that we have accomplished. And I really do feel for midlife women, that's something we need to reflect on, because many of the answers to the questions that we already have within us, because they've become a question or an issue because somewhere along the line you've been exposed to it. And somewhere along the line, if you really think about it, the answer is there. But we
mhm.
forget. I know I forgot all about it. And it's so funny because I still am waiting for one of them to say, well, mom, you relocate. You know, they don't remember. And I'm not reminding them unless they listen to this.
Yeah.
It's true. I was so
Mhm.
about how this was not a good time and everything else, and I had done the exact same thing myself. So sometimes we need to kind of take a good look at ourselves and turn, situations around and take a look at ourselves and think, okay, how closely aligned is this to something that I've actually done before? And what is it that I've learned in the past that I can bring to this current situation so I won't be, quite frankly, so stressed out?
Exactly. And you said the key word is reflection. And that's something that has been a part of my life and my journey. Reflection. I think that's where I learned a lot about myself. That's where I get my wisdom from. That's where I get ideas from and have aha moments. So reflection is really a gift. And I think sometimes we as women, we get too busy to sit down and get still and reflect and journal about what is it that we're learning about ourselves.
I have this exercise that I like to do. It's not my original. I learned it from one of the many workshops, classes, or whatever. After my prayer time, I have this start your day in a positive way. It's a process that I go
Mhm.
through. And one of the things that I do is I write this kind of like a letter. And I'm writing not necessarily, I'm writing in the first person or the second person. I don't know which one it is. I'm writing in a person. And I'm saying, Lord, Lord, what is it that you want me to do today? Or what is it that you want me to know?
Yes.
And then I just wait. I
Mhm.
write the question in one color, and then I write the answer in another color.
Oh, I love
The
that.
whole idea is the idea of that this isn't just you, this is something else that's coming through you. And it's
Yeah.
amazing what comes out of that. And sometimes,
Mm.
and the first time I did that, I was like, okay, is this real? This is me talking, right? I mean, because like, right? How could this, but what came out of it were things that I already knew, but I hadn't put it down on paper and I hadn't put things together like that. But there
Yeah.
were also some aha moments, things that I had forgotten about, or things
Mhm.
that I hadn't given much credibility to or much credence to, all of a sudden came to the forefront. This is what you need to be doing, or this is the way, walk in that way, that kind of thing.
Yes.
And I think that
Yes.
sometimes we need to take the time,
Hmm.
ask our higher power, your pet rock, whatever you want to call it, because I think
Yes.
that intuition and that wisdom that we have gleaned all these years is just waiting for us to ask.
Exactly. And that's why I said, earlier that, I learned how to tap into my inner brilliance because that's where everything is. As you said, we have everything that we need inside of us. And I think we forget that sometimes because we're so busy looking at our out of vision circumstances, things that get in our way or all the different problems. We're so focused on the out of vision circumstances rather than what's going on the inside.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Cherri, it's been so wonderful talking with you, and your wisdom is just amazing. And for those of you who are listening, make sure you take a look at the show page because all of Cherri's social media is there as well. And again, Cherri Walston is a work-life mentor for high-achieving women leaders. And on her site, she's got an area there for consultation so you can connect with her and find out more about how she can help you realize your superpower and get some balance when it comes to your work and your life and really continue to achieve those things that you've always been wanting to achieve. Thanks again for being on the Vibe Living
Thank
podcast.
you.
It's
It's
been
been a
wonderful having you.
pleasure.
Thank you so much. And again, of course, thank you to all of you who decided to join us. I can't tell you how it's important that you have just spent a little bit of time with us and maybe talking about those things that have been near and dear to your heart, but you just haven't really put a face on it. If you liked this podcast and the other ones that are there, please take the time to like it and comment because I do read your comments, and also share this podcast with someone you think would really like to find out more about what it is to vibe, to be more vibrant, more intuitive, more beautiful, and empowered in midlife. Thanks so much for listening, everybody. Have a fantastic day. And don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody. Thanks for listening to the Vibe Living Podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, like, and comment, and share this podcast. Have a fantastic day, and don't forget to vibe. Bye-bye, everybody.